So now we have all of our measurements recorded. Let's apply them to a new page. I'm going to go to our Web Design 2 folder, right click and create a new folder called Assignment 5. And right click again inside of that folder and create a new file. I'll call this one Mezzo and open it up. I'm gonna put my files out of the way since I don't have that much space to work with, and I'll bring up my CSS Designer. In previous exercises, we've worked with CSS being added into our document as we work. For this one, I'm going to create a new source, a new CSS file. I'll call it Mezzo as well, mezzo.css, and click OK. Now I have a Mezzo CSS file that will keep all of our CSS code away from our HTML source code. Before we start to make any of these changes, I'm going to click on Body and add that selector to Mezzo CSS. Press Return, and I'm going to change it to 960 pixels since I know that's the width of this page. And since we want it centered, I'm going to change the margins on either side to auto. And that will give us a floating page, 960 pixels wide. The first division we'll be working on is going to be our header. Click at Header, Insertion Point. I'm going to give it a class of Page Banner. Following inside of that, there will be two other elements, the logo and the top navigation, that little menu on the side. I'm not going to build the whole menu right now, I'm just going to give it a box where it can exist. So I'll insert first an aside for that logo, an insertion point. I'll give it a class of banner logo, and after the aside we can put in another navigation bar and call this one top nav. After the header, we're going to have our top content. It's going to be a section. I'll give it an ID of top content, and I'll put it in after the page banner tag. Next, inside of the top content, I'm going to clear that text, give me some space, and here I will insert two articles, one for recent entries and the other one for the slideshow. So I'll click on first on the article, an insertion point, give it a class of recent entries. Click OK. And after that article, we put in the next article, which is slideshow. Click OK. That's followed by the main content. And something that I was thinking about the main content is that I did not take into account that there are blog entries on one side and an about box on the other. We figured that this is about 600 here, maybe at 20 more on either side, so it was probably 640. At this point, I'm going to say that the main content is actually 960 pixels wide. And inside of the main content, there's going to be a blog entry at 640. We don't know how tall these are going to be at the end, but for now I'm just going to give it an imaginary height of 500. On the right side there is an about column. So 960 minus 640 is about 320. I'll give it 310 just to have a little bit of extra space, and I'll give it the 500 pixel height just so that it's equal to the other side. And I will insert a new section and I'll call it the main content after the last tag, which was top content. Give this an ID of main content. I'll delete the tab for content ID, etc. Give me some space and insert the blog entry article. Give it a class of blog entry. And next to it there will be an aside, and I'll call it about in class. It's just that section. Following the main content, we have our older posts. The older posts are actually 3 articles with a header. So I'm going to create a new section here. Give it an ID of older posts. I'll click OK. And remove the content for ID. Later on we'll have to add an H1 or something here. For now I'm just interested in adding the articles that will go inside, or actually the one that will be repeated 3 times. I'll give it a class of archive posts. Click OK, and I will copy this article 2 times. I'll remove some of these extra spaces here. And finally we have a footer at the very bottom. I like footers because I can just say before the end of the tag body, put in a new footer, call it footer ID. Now we can start playing with some of the numbers, starting with the page banner. Page banner, I'll add a new selector. Press return to accept. Our width, I know that it's 960 all around. I'll keep on repeating that throughout the code. Our height is 90. Pixels. I had saved the banner logo and top nav for the end because there's some additional coding that needs to be done to these. I'm going to start by selecting the banner, page banner, and giving it a relative position. That way everything inside of it will be dependent on it for position. Our banner logo, which is floating to the side and outside of the box. I'll add a new selector. Banner logo. The width is 235. The height is 65. And we're going to give it an absolute position. I'm just going to guess that this is about 20 pixels to the left and maybe 15 or 20 pixels from the top. So from the top I'll say 15, and to the left, since it's going outside into negative territory, I'll say minus 20 px. Press enter. The top nav, I'll give it a width of 355 and a height of 30. We'll do all the UL and LI stuff later. This also gets an absolute position. And the top, I'd say just for now 20 from the top and 20 from the right. And make sure that this is floating right. I guess our banner logo as well should be floating left. And I have 2 banner logos. I seem to have 2 banner logos all of a sudden. One of them is probably blank, and that's the one right there. I'll delete that and go back to my code. My banner logo can then float to the left. And now Dreamweaver's decided to show us what's actually going on. We do have this banner logo that's floating outside of the box, and we have this top nav that is just floating up top right. Next we'll do our top content. CSS back. Top content, new selector. This goes all the way across, 960 pixels. And 243, since that's what the elements inside are measured, 243. And so it plays nice with the rest of the page. I'll make it float to the left. I'm going to go to recent entries, create a new selector for it. And recent entries are 444 pixels wide by 243. I'll make it float to the left as well. Slideshow. Add a selector. Our width is 506 and our height is 243. Since this is inside a big box, I'll make it float to the right. And then I have that space inside. After that, we'll move on to the main content. Main content. I'm adding a selector. Main content will go across 960. I'm going to give it the artificial height of 500. Float to the left again so that it plays nice with the rest of the elements in the page. Our blog entry, add a selector. Give it a width of 640. We'll float the stuff along later. And the artificial height of 500. Once we have content in, we can change it to auto. This floats to the left. Next we have our about. Add that selector. Width is 310. Height, we'll give it the artificial 500. And we will float this to the right. Next we have older posts, and older posts are presented in 3 columns, and we said we'll later add that H2. For now we're just interested in those 3 columns. So older posts for now will take this 640 wide in our selection. And we'll float it to the left. The individual archive posts, I'll click on the selector, add that. Since this 3 archive posts will fit inside 640, I'll just divide 600 by 3 and just say the width will be 200 pixels. For now, maybe 250 tall. These will also float to the left. And finally our footer ID. I'll add a selector, footer ID, and give it a width of 960, a height of 50, and I'll also float it to the left. And let's see what I end up with. Go just design. I'm going to hide these designers. And now we have this bare bone structure of the page. We have our banner with the logo floating. We have the top navigation. We have our top content. We have our main content. We have those archive posts. Next, we'll just need to start adding some color and content and moving some stuff around. We'll do all that in the next video.